The grand halls of the Shen estate were silent, save for the soft echo of polished shoes against marble floors. Sunlight spilled through the ornate windows, catching the golden trim along the ceiling and glinting off the crystal chandeliers. It was the kind of splendor that drew awe from outsiders, but for those who lived within, it had become merely routine, a gilded cage rather than a home. Shen Yuxi walked briskly along the corridor, her heels clicking in measured rhythm. She carried herself with the poise of someone born to command attention, and in many ways, that was exactly who she had been trained to be. Every gesture, every smile, every carefully chosen word was a calculated step toward the life she wanted. The life of the Shen family's recognized heiress. Today, however, even Yuxi felt a flicker of unease. She paused at the edge of the grand dining hall, peering inside to see her mother, Madame Shen, seated at the long table with a set of meticulously folded documents. "Yuxi," her mother called without looking up, her voice sharp yet controlled. "Come here." Yuxi approached, keeping her expression neutral. "Mother, you summoned me?" Madame Shen's eyes were cold as she slid the papers toward her. "The Li family has proposed a marriage alliance. Their heir, Li Zhen, is a young man of remarkable influence. It could strengthen our position considerably." Yuxi's pulse quickened, though she kept her face composed. "I understand." And her voice faltered slightly under the weight of expectation. "You intend for me to be the bride, I presume?" Madame Shen's lips curved in a faint smile. "Of course. You are, after all, the daughter who has worked hardest to uphold the family's reputation. Our other daughter," she let the words hang in the air like a shadow, "is still delicate." Yuxi's eyes narrowed subtly. Shen Qinghe, the real daughter, had grown up in the background, quietly learning, quietly observing. Yuxi had always known she was the one in the spotlight, yet this arrangement stirred an unspoken tension within her. Still, she nodded carefully. "I will prepare for the meeting with Li Zhen." Madame Shen's gaze lingered for a moment, appraising. "See that you do. The family's legacy depends on it." With that, Yuxi turned and left, her mind already racing through strategies. She would charm, impress, and secure the alliance. Nothing, no quiet sister, no secret truth, would stand in her way. Meanwhile, across the city in the Grand Li estate, Li Zhen was reviewing the same proposal, though with far less concern. He had already done his research, the Shen family's documents, their history, and the rumors about the daughters. Unlike most heirs, who accepted proposals at face value, Li Zhen prided himself on seeing beyond appearances. Yuxi's name had come up in reports. Elegant, sharp, ambitious. But something in her profile didn't match the whispers he'd gathered from sources close to the Shen household. There was a quiet, overlooked daughter, Qinghe, whose intelligence and resilience had been consistently underreported. Li Zhen leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against the desk. "Interesting," he murmured. "The family wants the visible daughter, but the true strength lies in the shadow." A slight smirk tugged at his lips. This marriage would not be a matter of appearances, but of truth. He would ensure the right daughter, not the one everyone admired, but the one who deserved it, claimed her place. Back at the Shen estate, Qinghe moved quietly through the garden, her fingers brushing the soft petals of the peonies that lined the path. She had overheard her mother's discussion with Yuxi earlier, though she kept herself out of sight. Her heart was heavy, not with jealousy, but with the fear of being overlooked once again. She had long known her place in the family. The silent observer, the daughter who existed mostly in shadows. Yet Qinghe's mind was sharper than anyone realized. She had watched Yuxi's every move, seen the meticulous planning, the careful manipulation of family members. And though she had been trained to be gentle, to follow, she had learned to protect herself in subtle ways. When a servant approached her with a message, Qinghe's eyes widened slightly. It was an invitation, from the Li family, addressed specifically to her. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. "Your presence is requested at the Li estate. We wish to meet the Shen family's daughters in person." Qinghe's breath caught. She had never been considered for such matters. She glanced toward the estate, toward the grand hall where Yuxi would no doubt be preparing, and a small determined smile curved her lips. Perhaps this time, she would step into the light. The day of the meeting arrived, and the Shen estate was a flurry of activity. Yuxi moved through the preparations like a general, ensuring every detail, every hairpin, every fold of her gown, was perfect. Qinghe, in contrast, remained calm, quietly observing, choosing a simple dress that emphasized grace over grandeur. When the carriage arrived to escort the daughters to the Li estate, Yuxi's excitement was barely contained. She was ready to claim her position. Qinghe, however, felt a mixture of nerves and curiosity. This was unfamiliar territory for her, a place where she might finally be seen, not as a shadow but as herself. As they approached the Li estate, the gates loomed large, and a figure awaited them. Li Zhen stepped forward, his eyes sharp, yet warm. He bowed slightly, an acknowledgement that carried both authority and subtle intrigue. "Welcome, daughters of the Shen family," he said. His gaze lingered on Yuxi first, as expected. But then, almost imperceptibly, it shifted to Qinghe. A faint smile crossed his lips, one that hinted he had already seen something most would overlook. Yuxi's eyes sparkled with calculated charm. "Thank you for receiving us, Lord Li. I am honored by the opportunity to meet you." Qinghe's voice was soft but steady. "It is an honor to be here, Lord Li." Li Zhen inclined his head, intrigued by the contrast. One daughter dazzled by ambition, the other quietly strong beneath a gentle exterior. Already, the seeds of a complicated dance were sown, and neither daughter would realize how much this meeting would change their fates. The carriage doors closed behind them, and as the shadows of the estate stretched long in the afternoon sun, a silent thought lingered in the air. Appearances could deceive, but the truth had a way of emerging, even in the most gilded halls. And for Li Zhen, the game was only just beginning. The Li estate was a world apart from even the grandest halls of the Shen family. Marble floors gleamed like glass, and the scent of jasmine lingered in the air, a gentle perfume that hinted at refinement and control. Li Zhen had ensured that every detail, from the placement of the furniture to the faint melody of the piano in the background, would signal both authority and sophistication. Shen Yuxi stepped out of the carriage first, her posture flawless, her smile radiant. Every movement was calculated to impress. She had memorized the details of Li Zhen's tastes, his rumored interests, even the topics that might entertain him. Ambition surged through her like fire, each beat of her heart a drum of certainty. She would win this marriage, no matter what. Qinghe followed, quieter, almost hesitant, yet her presence had an understated elegance that did not go unnoticed. She wore a simple pale blue gown that complemented her gentle features. Unlike Yuxi, she had made no effort to dazzle. She had only sought to appear composed, sincere, and unobtrusive. Li Zhen approached, standing tall with an air of calm authority. His eyes first fell on Yuxi, as expected. She met his gaze without hesitation, offering a smile that was warm but precise. It was the smile of a woman trained to charm, and for a brief moment, even Li Zhen allowed himself a faint nod of acknowledgement. "And you must be Shen Yuxi," he said. His voice even, courteous, yet edged with a curiosity that Yuxi could not detect. "I have heard much about you." "I am honored, Lord Li," Yuxi replied, her tone smooth as silk. "I hope to live up to the reputation of the Shen family, and contribute to the alliance between our houses." Li Zhen's attention then shifted to Qinghe. Her expression was quieter, almost demure, but there was a steadiness in her gaze that made him pause. Unlike Yuxi's practiced charm, Qinghe's sincerity radiated subtly, like the soft glow of sunlight through morning mist. "And you are Shen Qinghe," he said, noting the slight hesitance in her steps as she approached. "It is a pleasure to meet you." Qinghe inclined her head, keeping her voice soft but confident. "The pleasure is mine, Lord Li." For the first time, Li Zhen allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. There was something about her composure, her gentle strength, that drew his attention. Unlike Yuxi, who sought to impress, Qinghe seemed unaware of the weight of the moment, yet carried herself with dignity. The introductions were followed by a tour of the estate. Yuxi led with precision, matching every expectation Li Zhen might have had about sophistication and grace. Every word, every gesture, was calculated to impress. Qinghe followed silently, absorbing the environment, noting subtle details that Yuxi overlooked, the slight imperfection in the paintwork, the faintly faded corner of a rug, the way Li Zhen's gaze lingered thoughtfully on certain art pieces. As they entered the music room, Yuxi immediately spotted the grand piano. "I heard you play," she said smoothly, stepping closer. "I would love to hear a piece someday." Li Zhen's eyebrows rose faintly. "Do you play yourself?" "Of course," Yuxi replied. "I have been trained since childhood in piano, violin, and several languages. I aim to be well-rounded." Impressive, Li Zhen said, though his tone was neutral. Perhaps you could perform for me. Yuxi's smile widened, pleased at the opportunity. She had prepared a short composition in her mind, practiced and polished, and she could already see how this would endear her to him. But before she could take her seat at the piano, Qinghe stepped forward quietly. I play as well, she said softly, almost apologetically. But I have not practiced as much in public. Li Zhen's interest deepened. He gestured for her to sit. Please play for me. Qinghe hesitated for a moment, then lowered herself onto the piano bench. Her fingers moved across the keys with a grace that was understated but precise, the music gentle, fluid, and emotionally resonant. It was not flashy, but it carried a quiet depth that made the room fall silent. Even Yuxi's practiced smile faltered slightly as she realized the subtle power in her sister's playing. Li Zhen leaned forward slightly, captivated. There was a sincerity in the music, a purity that Yuxi could not fabricate. While Yuxi impressed with ambition, Qinghe's presence and talent touched something deeper. When the final note faded, Li Zhen remained silent for a moment, letting the resonance linger. Then with a measured nod he said, Thank you. That was remarkable. Qinghe's cheeks flushed lightly, and she gave a small modest bow. Yuxi, on the other hand, was clearly perturbed. She had expected to shine in every way possible, but here was her sister. Quiet, overlooked, yet effortlessly captivating. The afternoon progressed with further introductions and discussions about the potential alliance. Yuxi spoke eloquently, outlining strategies, demonstrating her knowledge of finance and social connections. Yet with every word she spoke, Li Zhen's attention drifted back to Qinghe. He asked subtle questions, engaging her in conversation that revealed intelligence, insight, and kindness, qualities that Yuxi could only simulate in performance. By the time tea was served in the estate sunroom, the contrast between the two sisters was undeniable. Yuxi radiated ambition and practiced charm. Qinghe radiated authenticity and quiet strength. Yuxi noticed Li Zhen's attention lingering on her sister and stiffened. Something was not going according to plan. Every instinct screamed at her to regain control, to ensure that she remained the one in favor. She forced a polite smile, but the edges of her confidence were cracking. Li Zhen, meanwhile, observed both daughters carefully. It is interesting, he thought, how one can seek to impress the world and yet fail to move it, while another, unnoticed, can leave a lasting impression with nothing more than sincerity. As the visit drew to a close, Li Zhen escorted the sisters to the carriage. Yuxi maintained her composure, yet internally, she was calculating, planning her next move. Qinghe, quiet and observant, felt a mixture of surprise and hope. She had stepped into unfamiliar territory and found that perhaps, for once, being herself was enough. Li Zhen watched the carriage depart, a faint smile on his lips. The path ahead would be complicated, but he already knew where his heart leaned, and it was not toward the daughter who sought to impress, but toward the one who moved quietly, with integrity and grace. The carriage rattled along the cobblestone path back to the Shen estate, carrying two sisters who could not have been more different in their thoughts. Shen Yuxi stared out the window, her mind a storm of calculation. Every gesture, every smile, every word she had spoken at the Li estate. Had it been enough? Li Zhen's eyes lingered on her sister longer than on her, and though she forced herself to ignore it, the realization burned like a hidden wound. How could he? Yuxi muttered under her breath, clenching her fists. I am the daughter of the Shen family. I am the one who deserves recognition. That quiet girl. She has nothing. Why does he care about her? Across the seat, Qinghe kept her gaze on the passing trees, her thoughts quieter but no less aware. She had noticed Yuxi's tension, and the underlying ambition that had always driven her elder sister. But she also understood that being overlooked had its own freedom. It allowed her to act without pretense. When the carriage arrived at the Shen estate, Madame Shen was waiting. Her expression neutral but sharp, as though she had sensed the undercurrents of the visit. Tell me, Madame Shen said, addressing Yuxi first. How did the Li estate receive you? Yuxi straightened immediately, her practiced smile in place. Mother, the meeting went very well. Li Zhen was impressed with my knowledge and my preparations. I am confident that he sees me as the most suitable bride for the alliance. Madame Shen's gaze swept over Qinghe briefly. And you, Qinghe? Did you participate? Qinghe's voice was soft, but measured. I did my best, mother. I tried to answer his questions honestly and I played a short piece on the piano. Yuxi's head snapped toward her sister. You played? She demanded, voice tight with barely contained irritation. Why would you? Madame Shen cut her off with a sharp glance. Enough. Yuxi. Both of you are daughters of this family. The Li family requested to meet us. They will judge the two of you for themselves. Leave it at that. Yuxi's jaw tightened, her mind racing. Qinghe's composure, her sincerity, and the subtle charm that had captivated Li Zhen. It was dangerous. She had always been the one in control, the one destined to be recognized. And now someone, her own sister, was stealing the attention that should have been hers. That evening, Yuxi retreated to her room, pacing as she plotted. The alliance with the Li family was more than a marriage. It was power, influence, and security. She could not let Qinghe overshadow her. The idea of letting her quiet, invisible sister walk into the favor of Li Zhen was unacceptable. She opened her desk and retrieved a notebook filled with notes and observations she had kept over the years. Every weakness, every habit of Qinghe's, was catalogued. Every opportunity to manipulate events in her favor was underlined and circled in red ink. Yuxi smiled, a chilling curve of ambition. If the world wants to favor her, then I will make sure it regrets it. Meanwhile, Qinghe sat in the garden under the soft glow of lantern light, a small notebook of her own open in her lap. But her writing was not of schemes or manipulation. It was observation. Notes on Li Zhen's reactions, the subtle ways he engaged with each of them, and her own reflections on her emotions. She was curious about him, not in the calculated strategic way that Yuxi was, but in a genuine human way. Something about his calm, discerning gaze made her want to be better, to show him that she was more than just a shadow. Qinghe paused and looked at the moonlit pond, the water reflecting her own thoughtful expression. Why does he seem different with me? She murmured. Does he see me for who I really am? It was a question she did not know the answer to, but it was one she felt compelled to explore. The next morning, Yuxi began subtle maneuvers designed to secure her dominance. She sought to impress the household staff and family elders, emphasizing her intelligence, her charm, and her suitability for the Li alliance. She made small, pointed remarks about Qinghe's quietness, painting her as timid, fragile, and unprepared for high society. Qinghe, you really should speak more confidently, Yuxi said over breakfast, her voice saccharine but laced with accusation. Li Zhen may not appreciate shyness when it comes to negotiation or conversation. Qinghe's hands froze over her teacup, but she responded calmly, her voice gentle. I will try my best, Yuxi. But sometimes, quiet observation is more helpful than speaking for the sake of being heard. Yuxi's eyes flashed. Helpful, I hope you understand that appearances matter. Qinghe only smiled faintly, leaving the remark unchallenged. She had learned long ago that confrontation rarely worked against someone like Yuxi. Subtlety and patience were far more powerful. That afternoon, a letter arrived from the Li estate, hand-delivered by a footman. Yuxi tore it open eagerly, expecting praise and instructions for the next stage of the alliance. Instead, the contents made her blood run cold. We were impressed by the Shen daughter's visit. Lord Li requests to meet Shen Qinghe alone for a private discussion regarding her talents and suitability. Shen Yuxi may accompany her later for further evaluation. Yuxi's hands trembled slightly as she read the words again. This was not how things were supposed to unfold. The quiet, overlooked sister, Qinghe, was being singled out. Li Zhen had seen something in her, something beyond charm, wealth, and ambition. Her mind immediately whirred with counterplans. She could not allow Qinghe to outshine her. Perhaps she could influence the discussion subtly, distract Qinghe, or even discredit her before Li Zhen's eyes. The idea of losing her claim to the marriage, and thus her standing, was unbearable. That evening, Qinghe prepared herself nervously for the private meeting. Her heart pounded, not with fear of failure, but with anticipation. This was the first time she had been recognized as herself rather than as a shadow of her sister. Li Zhen awaited her in the estate's private library, surrounded by bookshelves that seemed to stretch endlessly. His expression was calm, yet there was an unmistakable spark of interest in his gaze. Shen Qinghe, he said, rising slightly as she entered. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. It is my honor, Lord Li, she replied, bowing slightly. He gestured for her to sit. his eyes studying her carefully. "I would like to understand more about you. Your thoughts, your talents, and how you approach challenges. Not as the daughter of the Shen family, but as yourself." Qinghe's heart fluttered. This was different. For the first time, someone was not asking her to perform or compete. Someone wanted to see who she really was. As she began to speak, Zhen listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, challenging her gently, and encouraging her to elaborate. And with each exchange, Qinghe felt herself growing more confident, more certain that perhaps she did not need to compete with her sister to find her own place in the world. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Shen estate, glinting off the polished floors and casting long shadows along the hallways. Shen Yuxi paced her room like a caged tiger, her mind a whirlwind of plans. The private meeting between Qinghe and Zhen had shaken her. That quiet sister of hers, timid, overlooked, had captivated him in ways Yuxi could not understand, much less control. "This cannot continue," Yuxi muttered, slamming her fist on the desk. The sound echoed through the room, but she felt no remorse. Power was not given, it was taken. And if she allowed Qinghe to slip into favor, all her years of careful preparation would be wasted. Yuxi began crafting her next moves with precision. She would attend the next meetings with a dazzling display of intellect, charm, and social grace, all while subtly undermining Qinghe. Small remarks here, strategically placed gossip there, anything to cast a shadow on her sister's growing influence. Meanwhile, Qinghe prepared herself for the second visit to the Li estate. Unlike her first visit, this time she was aware of her sister's ambitions and the subtle tension brewing between them. Still, she chose to focus on her own strengths. Her intellect, her kindness, and her natural ability to connect with people. When the carriage arrived, Yuxi followed, her smile flawless but sharp-edged. Qinghe cast her sister a brief glance, acknowledging the tension silently. She did not respond to Yuxi's unspoken challenge. Instead, she focused on the day ahead. Zhen greeted them with his usual calm demeanor, though today there was a faint knowing smile in his eyes. "Shen Yuxi, Shen Qinghe," he said, inclining his head in welcome. "Today, we shall engage in a series of discussions and activities to better understand each of you. Not only your skills, but your character, your decision-making, and your ability to navigate challenges." Yuxi's heart leapt with excitement. This was her chance to shine, to demonstrate her superiority over Qinghe in every conceivable way. But even as she prepared her carefully rehearsed answers, she noticed the subtle way Zhen's gaze lingered on Qinghe. A chill ran down her spine. The first test was a simple negotiation exercise, designed by Zhen to simulate real-world decision-making. Both sisters were presented with a fictional scenario. A small village facing economic hardship, a limited budget, and competing priorities. They were asked to devise a plan to resolve the problem. Yuxi attacked the problem with precision and authority, outlining an elaborate, strategic plan that highlighted her intelligence and resourcefulness. Every point was calculated to impress, every solution polished and professional. Qinghe, in contrast, took a different approach. She listened carefully to the scenario, considered the villagers' needs, and proposed solutions that were practical, compassionate, and realistic. Her plan lacked the flashiness of Yuxi's, but it revealed deep understanding, empathy, and foresight. Zhen observed both carefully, noting not only their solutions but their approach to problem-solving. Yuxi's brilliance was undeniable, but it was rigid, controlled, and self-serving. Qinghe's intelligence was quieter, yet adaptable and considerate, qualities that resonated with him far more deeply. Next came a social challenge. Interacting with a group of Li estate advisors who would test the sisters' communication skills, diplomacy, and patience. Yuxi entered with confidence, speaking elegantly and asserting herself with practiced charm. Yet her calculated manner was transparent, and the advisors' reactions were polite but reserved. Qinghe approached with humility, speaking softly but with genuine insight. She listened to questions attentively, responded thoughtfully, and built rapport naturally. By the end of the session, several advisors had expressed subtle admiration for her intelligence and composure. Yuxi's frustration grew with each passing moment. Every time she attempted to dominate the conversation or showcase her superiority, Zhen's attention subtly shifted back to Qinghe. Her carefully constructed plan to impress was unraveling. After the challenges, Zhen led the sisters to the estate gardens, a serene space of winding paths and blooming flowers. He spoke to them quietly, observing their reactions and their interactions with each other. Power, influence, and skill are important, he said softly, addressing both. But true character is revealed in how you treat others, how you handle setbacks, and whether you act out of genuine intent or selfish ambition. Yuxi's eyes narrowed. The words were pointed, and she understood the implication. She had relied on appearances, charm and strategy. But her sister had relied on sincerity and strength of character. Qinghe's cheeks flushed slightly, but she met Li Zhan's gaze steadily. I understand, she replied softly. I will do my best to act with integrity, even when it is difficult. Li Zhan's faint smile widened imperceptibly. He could see the quiet strength in her, the kind of resilience that could not be faked or forced. That evening, the carriage returned the sisters to the Shen estate. Yuxi's mind was a storm of frustration and plotting. She could not allow Qinghe to outshine her, yet every step she took seemed to make her sister's strengths more visible. Qinghe, meanwhile, felt a mixture of relief and newfound confidence. For the first time, someone had recognized her abilities and character. She had been tested and had proven herself, not to anyone but herself, and yet the recognition felt profound. As night fell over the estate, Yuxi scribbled furiously in her notebook, outlining strategies, potential manipulations, and ways to regain control. Her ambition was relentless, and she would not yield her claim without a fight. But Qinghe, lying quietly in her room, reflected on the day with a sense of quiet determination. She did not seek to outshine her sister, nor to manipulate outcomes. Instead, she focused on being herself, on cultivating her strengths, and on navigating the challenges ahead with honesty and grace. And as the moon rose over the Shen estate, the invisible threads of rivalry, ambition, and budding affection intertwined, setting the stage for battles, both of the heart and of power, that would shape their futures. The Shen estate had never felt so tense. The quiet halls, usually serene, now carried the invisible weight of rivalry, ambition, and unspoken intentions. Shen Yuxi moved through them like a predator, her mind whirring with strategies to reclaim her advantage. Every smile she offered, every gesture she made, carried a hidden edge, aimed at undermining her sister while preserving her own image. Qinghe, Yuxi said one morning over breakfast, her tone deceptively sweet. I hear you have been spending time practicing your piano and refining your social manners. That is commendable, but you must remember, appearances matter more than mere talent in certain circles. Qinghe, pouring tea carefully, kept her voice gentle but steady. I understand, Yuxi. I only hope to do my best without causing harm to anyone. Yuxi's smile hardened just enough to be imperceptible. That was the first small battle, planting doubt in her sister while projecting superiority. She had other plans, far more insidious. Later that day, Yuxi approached the household staff, whispering subtle insinuations about Qinghe's readiness for public events. She is talented, yes, Yuxi said with a faint sigh. But talent alone will not impress someone like Li Zhan. She must learn poise, charm, and discretion. Her words were crafted carefully, meant to plant seeds of doubt about Qinghe without appearing malicious. Yet even Yuxi did not anticipate how subtle manipulation could ripple outward. The staff, loyal but cautious, began to watch Qinghe more critically. Meanwhile, Qinghe remained unaware of these maneuvers. She was focused on preparation, reflecting on Li Zhan's previous questions, practicing responses, and continuing her music with a quiet determination. She did not seek recognition, only growth. The next visit to the Li estate brought the sisters into the heart of Li Zhan's subtle tests. Today, he had arranged a social dinner with several influential family members and advisors. Yuxi arrived first, her gown immaculate, her expression radiant. Every movement was calculated, every word rehearsed. She was the picture of perfection, or at least she believed she was. Qinghe followed, her attire simpler but elegant. She entered quietly, acknowledging everyone politely, her demeanor calm and respectful. While Yuxi sought attention, Qinghe exuded presence without effort. Li Zhan greeted them both, his eyes lingering on Qinghe as she curtsied. Welcome. Tonight, we will observe not only your conversation and etiquette but also how you handle unexpected challenges, he said. His words were neutral, but the subtle challenge in his tone was unmistakable. The first challenge came almost immediately. An advisor casually dropped a delicate question regarding a social scandal involving a neighboring estate. A test of diplomacy, discretion, and moral judgment. Yuxi seized the moment, crafting a polished answer that demonstrated awareness, caution, and strategic thinking. Her words were sharp, articulate, and deliberate. She spoke of alliances, reputation, and the importance of maintaining appearances. Qinghe, however, took a different approach. She listened attentively, considering the ethical implications of each option. Her answer was thoughtful, empathetic, and measured, emphasizing fairness, responsibility, and the human element of the situation. Li Zhan watched closely, noting the subtle differences. Yuxi's brilliance was undeniable, but it was self-serving and rigid. Qinghe's intelligence, tempered with empathy, revealed a character that was adaptable, sincere, and morally grounded. After the advisors retired for a brief discussion, Yuxi could no longer hide her frustration. In the quiet of the dining room, she leaned slightly toward Qinghe. "You must understand," she whispered, her voice low, "that one misstep could ruin everything. Don't think that your sincerity alone will impress him. This is a game, and only the clever will win." Qinghe met her gaze calmly, her voice soft but unwavering. "I do not seek to compete, Yuxi. I only wish to be honest in what I do. If that is not enough, then I will accept the consequences." Yuxi's lips pressed into a thin line. She had underestimated her sister's resolve. For the first time, she realized that controlling appearances was not enough. Qinghe had an inner strength that could not be so easily manipulated. Later that evening, Li Zhan requested a private conversation with Qinghe. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the estate gardens. "Shen Qinghe," he began, his voice calm but intent, "I have observed your approach today. It is quiet, yet effective. You handle pressure without arrogance, and your decisions reflect both intelligence and compassion. These qualities are rare." Qinghe felt her cheeks flush lightly. "Thank you, Lord Li. I only try to do my best." Li Zhan smiled faintly, a warmth in his eyes that was difficult to hide. "That is evident. Unlike others who seek to impress at any cost, you remain true to yourself. That is what makes you remarkable." Qinghe's heart skipped a beat. She had never been praised like this, not for who she truly was. It was a recognition that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Back at the Shen estate, Yuxi's frustration boiled into action. That night, she scribbled furiously in her notebook, outlining subtle schemes to discredit Qinghe before the Li family. Gossip, misdirection, and staged mistakes, all were planned meticulously. "Even if she has strength of character," Yuxi whispered to herself, "I will ensure that she falters in the eyes of the Li family. No one outshines me. No one." Qinghe, unaware of these schemes, sat quietly in her room, practicing piano and reflecting on the day. The challenges she faced had tested her resolve, but she felt a quiet confidence growing within her. She did not seek to destroy her sister or manipulate outcomes. She only sought to act with integrity, and that alone was becoming her greatest strength. As the moon rose over the Shen estate, the invisible lines of rivalry and affection were drawn more sharply. Yuxi's schemes were beginning to take shape, subtle but dangerous. Qinghe's quiet strength and sincerity were drawing attention and admiration, particularly from Li Zhan. The game was no longer simple. Ambition, rivalry, integrity, and emerging emotions intertwined, setting the stage for battles that would test loyalties, hearts, and destinies. And in the quiet shadows of the night, one truth was clear. No matter how calculated Yuxi's plans were, Qinghe's strength could not be so easily undone. The Shen estate was buzzing with tension the following morning. Word had spread, subtly and carefully planted by Yuxi, about Qinghe's unpreparedness for high society engagements. Nothing overt, just enough to seed doubt in the minds of household staff and visiting dignitaries. Yuxi walked through the halls with a serene mask, but inside, her mind raced. Every action, every glance, every word had been designed to subtly undermine Qinghe before the Li family's next evaluation. She smiled at servants, made polite conversation with advisors, and yet every step was calculated to elevate herself while keeping her sister in the shadows. Qinghe, however, moved quietly but with awareness. She had noticed the undercurrents, the subtle whispers, the curious glances, but she chose not to respond with anger or confrontation. Instead, she focused on preparation, practice, and poise, letting her actions speak louder than any gossip. The next visit to the Li estate would be a formal gathering. An evening reception attended by influential families, advisors, and business partners. This was the kind of event where appearances mattered most, and Yuxi saw it as her golden opportunity to cement her position. She arrived early, wearing a meticulously tailored gown, her hair perfectly styled, her every movement precise and intentional. Every eye in the room would be drawn to her, she thought. Tonight, she would shine brighter than her sister, and nothing would be allowed to interfere. Qinghe followed, her gown simpler but elegant, her hair pulled back with understated grace. She kept her posture calm, her demeanor composed. Unlike Yuxi, she did not seek attention. She sought to show who she truly was. The reception began with polite introductions, conversations about trade, influence, and alliances. Yuxi glided through the crowd with effortless charm, answering questions with practiced intelligence, impressing every guest she encountered. Yet Li Zhen's attention remained subtly, unwaveringly drawn to Qinghe. He watched her speak softly but confidently with a visiting advisor, offering insight tempered with humility. While Yuxi dazzled with calculation and polish, Qinghe moved with a quiet authenticity that commanded respect. Yuxi noticed the shift in attention, and her carefully maintained composure cracked ever so slightly. The subtle preference for Qinghe was undeniable, and she could feel her plans slipping through her fingers. As the evening progressed, Yuxi decided to escalate her schemes. She approached Qinghe with a mask of sisterly concern. "Qinghe," she said softly, her voice laced with faux gentleness, "perhaps you should step aside during the discussion with the Li advisors. You seem nervous. They may misunderstand your hesitation." Qinghe's eyes met hers steadily. "I appreciate your concern, Yuxi, but I will participate. I must answer honestly, even if it is uncomfortable." Yuxi's jaw tightened imperceptibly. The quiet strength in her sister's words was both infuriating and unnerving. Her plans to subtly discredit Qinghe were meeting resistance from an inner resolve that could not be shaken. Li Zhen, ever observant, noted Yuxi's attempts and Qinghe's calm defiance. He had anticipated some level of interference, but he also recognized the rare quality in Qinghe, a balance of intelligence, integrity, and courage. Later in the evening, he approached Qinghe privately in the garden. The moonlight cast soft shadows over the stone paths, illuminating her serene expression. "Shen Qinghe," he said, his voice calm, "you handled the challenges tonight with grace and clarity. Not everyone could maintain composure under such scrutiny, especially when faced with complications." Qinghe felt a faint blush rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, Lord Li. I only try to act honestly and thoughtfully." Li Zhen's gaze softened. "And that is precisely why I trust you. Talent and charm can be taught. Character cannot. You possess something rare, and I hope you understand its value." Qinghe's heart fluttered. She had never been praised like this, not for what she was, but for who she was. For the first time, she felt seen, not overshadowed. Back inside, Yuxi's schemes were unraveling. A carefully planted remark intended to embarrass Qinghe had backfired, drawing attention instead to Yuxi's ambition. Guests whispered about her calculated demeanor while quietly admiring Qinghe's composure. The balance of power was shifting, and Yuxi realized that brute ambition alone might not be enough to secure her victory. As the evening ended, Li Zhen escorted the sisters to the carriage. His attention lingered on Qinghe, a subtle warmth in his eyes that Yuxi could not mask. "Shen Qinghe," he said quietly, "you have impressed me in ways words cannot fully express. Continue as you are. That will speak louder than anything else." Qinghe bowed slightly, her heart light with both pride and nervous anticipation. Yuxi, seated beside her sister in the carriage, clenched her fists under her skirt. The mask of composure she wore did nothing to hide the storm inside. Qinghe's quiet strength, sincerity, and growing favor with Li Zhen were becoming impossible to ignore. That night, Yuxi returned to her room, pacing and muttering. "She cannot, will not outshine me. I will find a way. I must." Qinghe, meanwhile, reflected quietly in her room, her thoughts gentle but firm. She had faced whispers, subtle sabotage, and public scrutiny, yet she had remained true to herself. The recognition she had earned was not through deception or ambition, but through honesty, courage, and integrity. Outside, the moonlight bathed the Shen estate in silver, casting long shadows that mirrored the tensions, rivalries, and emotions simmering beneath the surface. The battle lines were drawn, not only between two sisters vying for recognition, but between ambition and authenticity, deception and integrity, calculated charm and genuine character. And for Li Zhen, the choice was becoming clear. The daughter he admired, the one who had captured his attention and respect, was not the one who sought to dazzle the world, but the one who quietly shone in her own way. The morning sun rose over the Shen estate, gilding the marble halls in a pale gold. Shen Yuxi paced her room for the last time, her meticulously plotted schemes teetering on the brink. Every whisper, every subtle maneuver, every attempt to discredit Qinghe had been orchestrated for this moment, the final evaluation by Li Zhen. Yet as she rehearsed her words and gestures, a sense of unease gnawed at her. Despite all her careful planning, Qinghe's quiet strength and integrity had shown through. And tonight, the balance of power would finally be revealed. The evening arrived with a grand ceremony at the Li estate. Guests gathered in elegant attire, the halls illuminated with crystal chandeliers and the soft glow of lanterns. Every eye would be on the daughters of the Shen family, and the stakes had never been higher. Yuxi entered first, radiating controlled charm. Every step was poised, every smile calculated. She was the perfect heiress on display, the image she had cultivated for years. Qinghe followed, understated yet elegant, her presence calm, confident, and genuine. Unlike Yuxi, she did not demand attention. She commanded it naturally, through poise and authenticity. Li Zhen greeted them both, his gaze lingering on Qinghe just long enough for Yuxi to notice, and for the first time, panic flickered in her eyes. The final test was simple in concept but revealing in execution. Li Zhen had arranged a discussion among several influential advisors and family members, placing both sisters in scenarios that required leadership, empathy, and integrity under scrutiny. Yuxi took the floor first. She spoke eloquently, addressing every question with precision, strategy, and confidence. She dazzled the room with knowledge, charm, and an air of superiority. Yet beneath her polished exterior, there was a tension, a subtle sharpness that hinted at ambition overriding sincerity. Then Qinghe spoke. Her words were measured, thoughtful, and empathetic. She considered not only practical solutions but also the impact on others, demonstrating insight, fairness, and integrity. While Yuxi impressed through performance, Qinghe inspired through authenticity. The advisors and guests exchanged glances. Some whispered about Yuxi's brilliance, but many were quietly moved by Qinghe's composure and sincerity. The contrast was undeniable, and Li Zhen observed each reaction carefully. After the discussions, Li Zhen called the sisters aside privately in the estate gardens. The moonlight shimmered across the fountain, illuminating the tension in the air. "Shen Yuxi," he began, his tone calm but firm, "your abilities are impressive. Your ambition, intelligence, and composure are evident. Yet I must speak honestly. Talent without integrity is a fragile thing." Yuxi's lips pressed into a thin line, and she nodded, though her mind raced with counterarguments. Li Zhen turned to Qinghe, his expression softer, warmer. "Shen Qinghe, your actions today, your responses, and the way you carried yourself. It is rare to witness such a combination of intelligence, empathy, and integrity. You did not seek to impress. You simply acted as yourself, and that, above all, is why I respect you." Qinghe's heart pounded. She had never been acknowledged like this. She felt seen, appreciated, and understood, not for pretense or manipulation, but for her true self. Yuxi's frustration boiled over. How could he?" she whispered, fury flickering in her eyes. Li Zhen's gaze hardened slightly. "Yuxi, your efforts to manipulate perception and undermine your sister were evident. Ambition without honor will not secure lasting trust or respect. I cannot endorse that as the foundation of any alliance, personal or familial." Yuxi's face drained of color. She had realized, finally, that her calculated charm and schemes could not overcome sincerity and integrity. Her mask of superiority had slipped, revealing the sharp ambition beneath, and in that moment, the outcome was decided. Turning back to Qinghe, Li Zhen extended his hand gently. "Qinghe, the marriage contract, the alliance. I wish it to be with someone of true character. That someone is you." Qinghe felt a mixture of awe, relief, and joy. "Thank you, Lord Li," she whispered, bowing slightly. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, a connection deeper than respect or admiration sparked between them. Li Zhen's lips curved in a rare, genuine smile. "Not for the contract, not for appearances, but for who you are. That is what matters most." Yuxi turned away, fury and disbelief warring with the dawning understanding of her defeat. She had underestimated her sister and overestimated her own ability to control perception. The lesson was harsh. Deception and ambition alone could never surpass integrity and quiet strength. Qinghe, meanwhile, stood tall despite the whirlwind of emotion. She had endured whispers, subtle sabotage, and public scrutiny, yet she had remained true to herself. Tonight, she had not only proven her worth but also secured the life she had never imagined. A life where she was recognized, respected, and valued for her true self. The weeks that followed saw the formalization of the alliance. Qinghe's role as the rightful daughter and future bride of Li Zhan was acknowledged by both families. Yuxi, humbled but unbroken, retreated to reflect on her actions, forced to confront the consequences of her ambition. As for Qinghe and Li Zhan, their bond deepened. Meetings became shared moments of conversation, laughter, and mutual respect. Slowly, admiration blossomed into affection, built not on superficial charm or obligation, but on understanding, trust, and genuine connection. In the quiet of the Li estate gardens, under the soft glow of lanterns, Li Zhan took Qinghe's hand. "You have shown me something rare," he said softly. "A heart unafraid to be true. That is why I trust you, and why I care for you." Qinghe's eyes glistened with tears of happiness. "And I trust you, Lord Li. Not because of status, but because you see me as I am." A gentle breeze stirred the cherry blossoms in the Li estate gardens, carrying the soft scent of spring. The estate had grown livelier over the past months, reflecting the new beginnings of its residents. The air was filled with laughter, the clinking of teacups, and the quiet rustle of pages in books, a serene rhythm of life restored. Shen Qinghe walked along the stone path, her hand lightly grazing the petals of the blossoms. She had come a long way since her first tentative steps into the Li estate, from being the overlooked quiet daughter of the Shen family to a woman recognized for her strength, intelligence, and unwavering integrity. Li Zhan walked beside her, his hand brushing hers occasionally, a gentle reassurance that had become a comforting constant. He had kept his promise. Their bond was built on truth, trust, and mutual respect, not appearances or obligation. Their courtship had been slow, thoughtful, and honest, allowing their affection to deepen naturally. "You've grown so much," Li Zhan said softly, glancing at her with warmth in his eyes. "I knew from the start that your strength wasn't in charm or ambition. It was in your heart, your mind, and your integrity. That is rare." Qinghe smiled, a blush rising to her cheeks. "And I've learned from you as well, Lord Li. Patience, discernment, and seeing people for who they truly are, not just what they show the world." They paused beneath the largest cherry tree in the garden, its branches heavy with delicate blossoms. Li Zhan reached out, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "I've waited a long time to say this, but now, I hope you'll accept me not just as your husband, but as someone who will always respect and cherish you." Qinghe's heart swelled. She had dreamed of being recognized, but this, the recognition of her character, the sincerity of his feelings, was beyond any expectation. "I accept," she whispered, her hand slipping into his. "And I hope to walk beside you, through every challenge, with honesty and trust." Meanwhile, back at the Shen estate, Shen Yuxi had retreated into reflection. The defeat she had faced had been bitter, yet enlightening. Her ambition had not vanished, but it had been tempered with humility and self-awareness. Over time, she began to rebuild herself, not through deception or manipulation, but through genuine effort, learning patience, empathy, and restraint. She had come to understand a simple truth. Recognition earned through integrity and sincerity was far more enduring than any achieved through cunning or charm. Though her relationship with Qinghe remained complex, a tentative understanding had formed between them. Yuxi was no longer an enemy, but a sister learning to find her own path. Months passed, and the Li estate flourished under Qinghe's influence. She approached every responsibility with diligence and grace, earning respect not only from Li Zhan but from the household staff, advisors, and visiting dignitaries alike. Her quiet strength became a cornerstone of the estate. Her counsel sought for both practical decisions and matters of the heart. Li Zhan, meanwhile, never stopped marveling at her balance of intelligence and empathy. Their days were filled with shared laughter, long discussions under lantern-lit trees, and the gentle comfort of companionship. Love had grown naturally, rooted in understanding, respect, and the authenticity they had both come to cherish. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting golden light across the estate, Qinghe and Li Zhan stood side by side, watching the reflection of the sunset on the pond. Do you remember, Li Zhen asked, his voice soft, our first meeting? How different it all seemed. Qinghe chuckled, a warmth in her eyes. I do. I was nervous, unsure. And yet, somehow, I felt like I had been waiting for this moment my whole life. Li Zhen took her hand gently. And now, we have a future built on truth, respect, and love. That is something no scheme, no ambition, could ever take away. Qinghe squeezed his hand, feeling the depth of the promise between them. Yes. And I will cherish it, every day. The cherry blossoms drifted lazily through the evening air, a symbol of beauty, renewal, and the quiet strength that had carried Qinghe from the shadows into the light. In the distance, the Shen estate glimmered peacefully, a reminder of lessons learned, growth achieved, and the enduring bonds of family. And so, with hearts unburdened by deceit and strengthened by integrity, Qinghe and Li Zhen stepped forward together, into a life filled with love, trust, and the promise of shared happiness. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.